So I guess all the lives have been going on fully. Oh, sorry. I got my Yitties out. So I guess all the live hasn't been going on all the way, which I wasn't aware of. So yeah. This hairstyle was cute. Okay. It says, as I was talking to Chuck, pretending to ignore Papa, he grabbed my phone out of my hand and walked away with it. Let me use this for a minute, he said. I thought it was strange, his needing my phone, but I was content just to have had some sort of contact with him. I continued talking to Chuck, and a few seconds later, Papa returned and placed the phone back in my hands. For some reason, without looking, I started clearing the screen. You're not clearing your screen, are you? Papa said. Yeah, why? I asked nervously. I couldn't believe we were actually having an exchange. Look at it, he said. I looked at the phone and felt like a child. How could I have not realized what he'd done? Okay, I'm moving tomorrow. Okay, sounds good. I thought it was strange, his needing my phone, but I was content just to have had some sort of contact with him. I continued talking to Chuck, and a few seconds later, Papa returned and placed the screen back in my hands. For some reason, without looking, I started clearing the screen. You're not clearing your screen, are you, Papa? Yeah, why? I answered nervously. I couldn't believe we were actually having an exchange. Look at it, he said. I looked at the phone and felt like a child. How could I not have realized what he'd done? It was his phone number. What was the last number again? I smirked. 2. In person, Papa was just as I had imagined him to be 8 years before I watched his videos. He was funny and charming, and his eyelashes curled perfectly above his almost squinty eyes. He had so much charisma and confidence. He was sure of himself and, well, me. I loved the idea of it and have loved many men in my life, but only one man would be the recipient of my ongoing devotion, no matter what, and that's why. Although it felt awkward and artificial to call Cool G Rap Daddy, it was more than fitting to call the man who would steal my heart over and over again. Papa, you're a beauty. Thank you. Oh, her chapters are starting to get a little longer. Holy Spirit, confession is not of Jesus. Christ come in the flesh is not of God, and this is the spirit of Antichrist, where ye have heard. Okay. It says, Around the Block, Chapter 10. It says, in April 2000, ICE had set me up in a 2-bedroom condo in Santa Clarita, about 30 minutes north of Beverly Hills. A few weeks later, he landed a great paying gig on Law and Order, Special Victims Unit, and was headed to New York. ICE had been my safety net, and I knew that if I got myself into any trouble, he would help me out. But now he had some bad news. Hey babe, he said, I have to let you go. He said he was pretty sure that with the skills he had given me, I would be okay. You'll be more than okay, he said. You're going to make it. And when you do, find me and buy me a white Benz. I've held on to those words all of these years. I made the promise and I mean it. Bye, ICE. Goodbye, baby girl. Meanwhile, Fred and I hadn't spoken much after our date, but Chuck insisted that Fred was really into me, so I naively continued to play cat and mouse with him via his voicemail. Once in a while, he would call me back. I wanted him more than ever, but he was elusive. I found myself fantasizing about him day and night. I made up things in my head, and whenever I did speak to him, I took all of his words to heart and sometimes even out of context. I wanted to believe that all of those sparks I felt when we were together were real, but I didn't imagine them. Then finally we got together. My hand shook up as I drove to his office, speeding along the 405 freeway. I checked my makeup and popped a few mints. My breathing was heavy, and so were my expectations. Walking down the long hallway in his open door, I whispered to myself, "Relax and breathe." The office was officially closed, so most everyone in the building was gone for the day, with the exception of a few stragglers. As I approached Fred's doorway, I felt a quivering in my knees, and I thought I would just drop to the floor. His voice saved me. "Close the door," he said. His workplace looked mostly like a living room, so I kicked off my shoes and joined him on one of the sofas. We talked for a while, but I really don't remember much of the conversation because as his lips were moving, all I wanted to do was inch closer to them. I didn't want to talk. We had done enough talking. I wanted my turn on this ride. So while he was in mid-sentence, I interrupted by gently biting, then pulling his bottom lip. He grabbed the back of my head and fused our lips together. I grabbed onto his flesh and heaven myself across the lab, straddling this wild man before I could begin to own this intensity. I was on my knee. I was on my knees. Him in my hand at that time felt like a privilege. He was allowing me to finally have him, to taste him, and again I felt powerful here. Powerful here. I was turned on by the fact that this was a man who so many wanted, and this man wanted me. On stage, he commanded crowds of people, millions, and at the very moment I commanded him, it was as if he and I had traded places in the world, and I was important at that moment. In moments like it, I didn't feel inadequate or mediocre. "Make me come and I'll marry you," were the only words I remember Fred saying to me. I was so caught up that for a hot minute, I might even have believed him, but before I knew it, my power trip was over. Few words were spoken and I was basically dismissed. Leaving was awkward and plain awful. Reality set in. I'd allowed myself to be seduced by the dream, and the wake-up call was harsh and unpleasant. I left Fred's office feeling dejected and even more than that, naive and silly. What advice do you need? What's up? There are quite a few memories of my time with Ja that will always stay with me. We used to have deep conversations about anything and everything. We spoke about his personal struggles and career plans. We spoke tenderly of his family, his grandmother, and a sister who died sometime before. In tribute to her, he has a tattoo of her name and angel wings on his back. Well, I need to do a video about Ja Rule, because there you go. There was his sister. That's how he got so hot. In the midst, what advice do you need? Girl, I would be nervous too. That's my biggest fear, because and I don't even bleed. And I don't bleed. So it's like, I'm gonna die. Seriously. That might be a death. That might be a death. That might be a laughed. I'm like, wanna. I was like, you are funny. No, but I'm already crazy, so it's like, damn, bro. I don't know about that one. Girl. Seriously. Yeah. No, girl. Ain't nothing you can do but just. I'm trying to say stuff without saying stuff. But my best friend had that problem. When she was dating somebody, her ex was like really big. And I'm not even like trying to be weird, but one day she sent me a video of him with a boner. And I was just like so caught off guard. Cause I'm like, what the fuck, bitch? Why would you send me that? Like, you're my best friend. I don't want to look at your nigga like that. But it was unbelievable. She had to send me that shit. Cause I ain't never seen nothing like that. Shit was like a whole arm. I was like, best friend, are you okay? No, that's why they broke up. Because she didn't want to have sex with him. Because he was too big. That's I don't know. I feel like I always get blessed with like normal, like, you know, like the perfect normal boyfriend size. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Well, I don't even know what to do. I'm so nervous. I might get broke. Girl, I just, I'm screaming. He is 6'7". I am 4'9". Oh, man. Oh, it's over for you. I'm screaming. You'll eventually get used to it. And then it's like, you can never break up with him because sex will never be the same for you again. You can't go from fucking to then something regular because you're gonna be used to like, yeah, so it's gonna be like, you gonna have to stay with him forever or find somebody the same time. So you get me off my book. I'm trying to finish this book. But yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. I've never had that issue. I've only one time. Well, that's not true. I had a Rufus. Rufus was definitely a nice size. Definitely. That shit used to hurt too. But in a good way. So I don't know. But I only had one experience where it was like, and that nigga was tossing me around. And I was like, get off me. I don't know. Anyways, back to the book. Y'all are crazy. I don't know, because Now that in flashbacks, screaming. Mm. All right, let's go back. That's awkward. After my encounter with Fred Durst, I was in need of a self-esteem boost. I looked up Ja Rule and we continued to hang out throughout the summer. Our nights consisted of plenty of sex, drugs, and liquor. We walked around the hotel in our robes. His suit always seemed to be full of people, label executives, other artists, women, hanger ons, you name it. We drank heavily. We popped XTC pills in rapid succession. We traveled in huge numbers and bounced from club to club. I felt I was a part of something real for the first time in my life. I was liked and accepted, and the perks were addicting. We could go anywhere and do anything. Everyone watched when we moved, and all the other girls wanted to come along. I was where other people wanted to be and felt special. There was quite a few memories of my time with Ja, and that will always stay with me. We used to have deep conversations about anything and everything. We spoke about his personal struggles and career plans. He spoke tenderly of his family, his grandmother, and a sister who died sometimes before. In tribute to her, he has a tattoo of her name and an angel wings on his back. In the midst of my tryst with Ja Rule, I still longed to be involved with Papa, but he was ignoring me. For the 4 straight months, I called with no response, yet I refused to give up. I needed the acknowledgement, and he finally called me. Like, what? Corinne, I wish we could go back and I could be your manager, girl, because you was just doing it a little crazy. Like, girl, you would have never been blowing up that nigga's phone. You would have never did that with Fred. I would have choked you. Like, what the fuck with you? But you could tell she didn't know her value. She had low self-esteem from being from her mom and fucking with Cool G rap. Cool, but he probably did that on purpose so that she wouldn't want to be with anybody else. That's probably why he broke her self-esteem. Plus, he felt like shit about himself. He was old. He was like an old rapper. His time came and went. He was big. Like, he didn't feel good about his situation. So that's why he made her feel like that in her situation. It was a power trip. That's how he really wanted to treat like record labels and like other artists, but he couldn't treat them like that. So he treated her like that. It says, we travel, okay, where we at? We could go anywhere and do anything. Everyone watched when we moved, and all the other girls wanted to come along. I was where other people wanted to be and felt special. There are quite a few memories of my time with Ja that will always stay with me. We used to have deep conversations about anything and everything. We spoke about his personal struggles and career plans. He spoke tenderly of his family, his grandmother, and a sister who died some time before. In tribute to her, he has a tattoo of her name and angel wings on his back. In the midst of my tryst with Ja Rule, I still longed to be involved with Papa, but he was ignoring me for 4 straight months. I called with no response. Yet I refused to give up. I needed the acknowledgement. Then he finally called me. When I heard his voice on the other end of the phone, my eyes began to tear. I was exasperated but remained composed. The meeting was set and I was on my way. As I was getting closer to the studio to meet Papa, I began to notice that familiar feeling of insecurity. My hair wasn't on right. My hair wasn't right. My clothes weren't new, and I just wasn't up to par. But when I arrived at the studio and began to take a long, winding walk to the back room, All eyes were on me. My self doubt disappeared with each step. When he saw me again for the first time in 4 months, his eyes seemed to dance. He instantly grabbed his backpack and we left. We talked all the way to his hotel. He made me laugh, and then, to my surprise, I made him laugh too. He was really listening to me and liked what I had to say. It was as if we'd known each other for years and we were friends. I didn't feel nervous or inadequate. I felt beautiful and appreciated. I was dizzy with delight, and for a moment, the reality whizzed through my head. I was with him. I had admired him from afar as a young girl and dreamed of this moment almost a decade before. And here he was. He was interested in me. As we walked into the Beverly Hills Hotel bungalow, an overwhelmingly need to prove my worthiness came over me. It was as if I had to show him I was worth keeping around, that I was worthy of his presence. I had to thank him for choosing me and do it in a fashion that would make him want to keep choosing me for years to come. Once again, I turned to sex. He sat in a chair in the living room and turned on the television. I'm pretty sure that there was some sort of verbal exchange, but I blocked it out. The only thing I registered was an insatiable need to feast, to take from him. I needed to feel his energy and to rock him to the core. Without thinking, one of my knees before I dropped on my knees before him and began to tear away at his clothes. His reaction was surprising, as if he didn't expect this. But after he found his home in the warm, wet confines of my mouth and throat, he laid back and exhaled. My body was on fire, and as I worked on Papa, I began ripping away at my clothes. I was at home here with him. I loved his body and this part of him that I wanted to ingest. He moved around in the chair to the point that it lifted off its front. It lit. It lifted off its front feet. There was a sort of levitation happening as we moved to the bedroom. I couldn't stop. I couldn't let our skin separate. It was as if he became my lifeline, my sexual IV for the next 6 hours. He filled me up and then drained me. He pounded and he stroked and he made me want to live and die at the same time. I thought my heart would stop and that I would take my last breath there on the bed. We're wet, okay. We're sticking to each other, and with every breath, he let go. I suck in, he pulled me and pushed me and threw my body around, having my way. And from that day, he would be my papa. Yet, just like that, he too was gone. He just got up and walked out. It was 6 in the morning, and he had a flight to catch. His home was a long way from Los Angeles, but I knew he'd be taking part of me with him, which made me feel satisfied for the moment. I twirled around in that hotel like a schoolgirl with a new dress. I was walking on air. I was ready. I wasn't for sure for what, although I was hanging out with Papa, with hip hop elites, with hip hop's elite and enjoying the best restaurants, had access to any club or party, and wore the hottest fashions. I had nothing to call my own or to support me and my son. When Ice T left for New York, my sense of stability quickly faded. There was no safety net. So, in my respects, I was back at square one, not to mention my drinking and experimentation with drugs had begun to get out of control, and I hadn't spent much time at all with my son. I became a hustler of sorts, bouncing in and out of strip clubs and selling myself in every way. I had gotten to a very desperate point where I only had sex if it was accompanied by perks. I expected and received money from every man in my life, especially celebrities. I used sex to keep them happy, and when they were happy, they were generous. I needed to survive now that ice was gone, and I didn't know any other way. Plus, I'll be honest, I was good at using sex to get what I wanted and needed. That's all I knew. In addition to using sex and depending on it, it got what I wanted. I couldn't be alone. So I would pack clothes for a week or two and just bounce around the condo. The condo had nothing in it really because it wasn't a home. And I had no idea what it took to turn it into one. ICE taught me a lot of things about LA and survival, but no one ever taught me how to live. I did experience genuine happiness around this time. I became involved with a young man. I was 21 emotionally going on 35, and he had just turned 18, but physically looked much younger. I had seen him at a party the day before. I wonder if this was Bow Wow. I have to look and see when Bow Wow turned 18, but I wonder if this was Bow Wow because it's like, who else could it be? It says I but physically looked younger. I had seen him in a party the day before we met. We noticed each other, and those 3 seconds became 6 as we moved in slow motion around each other. Just as quickly, I blinked and he was gone. The following night, another party and a girlfriend, and she knew him and would talk and would take me to his house. Although he had just turned 18, he already had his own home, vehicle, and lived very much of an adult life. We were let in by cousins who said Ray was sleeping upstairs. Soon Ray, was this Ray J? Oh, it was Ray J. Um, Sleeping upstairs. Soon Ray stumbled down the stairs, having just been woken up and coming off a late night out. His eyes opened wide and were immediately drawn to mine, almost like there were clouds under his feet, and he floated toward me and were introduced. Hey, I'm Ray. You know, I'm Ray J, the younger brother, singer Brandy. And not much else about that night was committed to my memory, but it began one of the happiest times of my life. It was so easy to fall in love with Ray. He brought back a pack of my youth that had been stolen from me years ago. Ray was single with no children, which equaled no drama. And at the time, I lived my life the same way, so much that I never told Ray about my son, or anything else about me for that matter. When I went out with him, I felt official. I was a girlfriend, and that entirely different from being just a lover. Ray and I spent months together as I juggled him and Papa like a circus act. My relationship with Ray made Papa uncomfortable and even furious. Papa knew everything about me and accepted me just the way I was, but the one thing he could never tolerate was me loving someone else. And I loved Ray J. It was the first time since Papa and I met that I had given so much attention to another man. It was not normal, and Papa didn't appreciate the change. Now, when Papa needed me, I wasn't always available. This new relationship was special to me because Ray J and I had someone to spend time in public as a couple. We held hands and let people know we were together. I was proud of that because Ray is a member of a tight knit, well family. It's not surprising that they didn't approve of me. They knew I was older than him and they were concerned for What's more, before meeting me, Ray had just gotten out of a long time relationship with one of the members of the girl group 702. His family had become accustomed to her being part of his life, and here I was, a virtual stranger. Eventually, however, certain members of his family accepted us, and we were free to enjoy our relationship. When Ray and I made love, we would go for hours on end, each hour more satisfying than the last. Being with Ray was always sweet and innocent. His kisses were long and his lips were and full and light as they met mine. He was young and still a bit inexperienced and shied away from oral sex, but he would kiss all around my lower regions and make my body quiver just the same. It was with Ray that I discovered my ability to orgasm without penetration or compilation. I would be excited just from his touch. Ray was with me because he liked me. It was pure, and purity was so new to me that it had been become more erotic than being with any other lover. After our lovemaking, we would pass out, him holding me and me feeling love. Ray and I created a stir around the town, and people began to wonder what it was I saw in him. He was so young and wasn't yet respected as a major player among men, when no one could have possibly realized what that it took a younger man to make me feel young again. We were really silly together. We enjoyed spending long afternoons and nights together. We saw our favorite movies like Big Mama's House, starring Martin Lawrence and Nia Long. 3 or 4 times I enjoyed them each time And if it were the first time, I felt free with Ray. We awakened a desire in me to get my youth back and hold tight. Ice had come and gone, and Fred was out of the picture. But my relationship with Ja was ongoing and became more intense as we ate, drank, and slept together. Our sex became a constant in my life, and he himself became the drug. I was also hooked onto the atmosphere being around Ja Rule and Murder Inc. Felt like being around family, the one feeling I had always longed for. We all knew we were up to no good, and I loved it. That is, till I found out that not only was Ja still in a relationship with his teenage sweetheart, but that they were also expected their second child. I entered my relationships with Ice, Ja, and Papa knowing they had other women, though none was married. I remember the first time I really registered for me that Ja had another relationship and responsibilities separate and apart from the carefree wild life he led in Los Angeles. It was early one morning at a hotel, and whoever the other girl was, we'd brought back with us that night before it was gone. It wasn't uncommon for Ja and me to pick up other women and have threesomes. We were wild and disregarded all the conventional rules of authority. The phone rang and I stayed quiet as Ja answered. The woman on the other end was frantic, not letting him get so much of a word in. All she could squeeze in was, "What girl? Somebody told you what?" He eventually slammed the phone down, and while the woman was still in mid-rate, he pulled me close and I lay on his chest and we passed out. That's how it was with Ja. One crazy adventure after the next. I was so out of then that there was a lot of things I'd long since forgotten, but then there were some incidents that I'll never forget. Like the night I thought Jai was going to die. We were getting ready to go out as usual. In the true form, we started popping XTC pills and guzzling Remy Martin straight from the bottle. It seems as if he took more than usual from the time we woke up until about 10 at night. This was a little scary. He had disappeared for a while in another room, probably to be with other girls, which was also common. About 45 minutes later, there was a soft, weak knock at the door. I opened it, and there he stood in a cold sweat. He was shaking and having a hard time walking. There were a few other girls in the room with us, and they all just stood there watching. They were new to our clique. They didn't know Ja like I knew him. I led him to the bathroom, but before he could make it, he began to throw up. At the time, I was so caught up with Ja that all I was thinking was that I needed to protect him. I didn't want any vomit to touch his skin. I cared deeply for this man, regarding of anything and anyone else. Ja purged for a few minutes, and just like that, he was better. I offered to get him some water, but he refused. Instead, he grabbed the Remy Martin bottle, guzzled, and we kept the party going. Sadly, he was amazing that way. He never stopped. He was always on when others were around. Meanwhile, Papa and I stayed in touch constantly. He had been working in Los Angeles a lot, and I jumped at the chance to see him. He became my refuge at times. Unlike with Ja and Murder Inc., there was no wild parties, no entourages, no other girls, no self abuse. Our time together was quiet and special. We watched movies, ordered rooms in room service. We he would preview his projects and let me hear his work. My favorite memories are of him giving me a private live show of his boxers. Most of all, we were friends who had incredible sex. I accepted early on that no man is perfect, although Papa was being unfaithful. He loved and valued his family and fiercely protected them from his life as an entertainer. I respected Papa's space and his privacy, and do so even now. It gives me chills when he spoke to his family in front of me. I felt privileged to be with him, a man who was so loved by the people in his life. He brought me a certain sense of calm, but it was typical of me to further complicate things. So it should be no surprise that somehow Dr. Dre entered the mix. Oh Lord. Chuck introduced Dre to me a week after I arrived in Los Angeles. Nothing happened right away, but when I visited Chuck on set of one of Dre's videos, things quickly took a familiar turn. I met Dre at the Universal City Hilbert near Universal Studios, June 8, 2000. Far away from luxury in Beverly Hills, Dre and I met in the hotel lobby lounge when we ordered drinks and made small talk. It was uneasy and awkward. We both knew what we were there to do. I couldn't figure out why we were stumbling around it. I didn't find him terribly attractive, physically or even sexually, and our personalities didn't particularly mesh. But power is an overwhelming thing. I felt important sitting there with him. Everyone knew his face, and I'm sure they suspected he was up to no good, being at a Hilton around midnight with a woman. But there in Hollywood, it's common and often expected. Room 2257 was a small and quaint, but it didn't matter. I knew he wouldn't be staying long, so I cut the conversation short and joined him under the sheets. It was still very awkward, and it wasn't as if he drove me mad. If he drove me mad like Ja or Papa or even Fred, I felt nothing. I just knew it was important. It was important, man. One of the highest paid, biggest selling artist producers in the world, as he got on top of me. I was empty and cold. I stared at his face and his eyes, and it was only when I ran his resume and status through my head that my insides began to feel warm. He left shortly afterward, and I was okay with that. Thinking back on it, I really don't know what led me to the hotel room into Dre's bed. It was another example of doing without thinking for all the wrong reasons. Like, girl, what is you doing? I hopped back on the merry-go-round and ran back to Ray, back to the place where I was safe, and where having sex felt natural. Around this time, Ray began to work on an album. I remember vividly that night he recorded the song that would change everything. Where do we go from here? Was a song about meeting someone, spending so much time with them, even beginning to love them, and wanting to know if it could or should be more. Ray stood in the recording booth, belted out that song, and accompanied it with tears. He cried, and I cried witnessing. I loved this boy so much and wanted nothing more than to stay with him, but I knew that one day I would have to go. That one day he would know who I had been with and render me unworthy of his affection. He was now showing me. As much as I love Ray, I was too deep in my lifestyle with an undeniable reputation to go back. I was still greedy. I wanted it all. I wanted Ray's love. I wanted the carefree, bling-filled lifestyle of hanging with the likes of Ja and the laid back, mind blowing sex and friendship I relished with Papa. And more than anything, I wasn't ready to settle down. The first time I tried to settle down with a man led to me wanting to die. I wasn't going back there, so I knew that the end of for Ray and me was near the inevitable. Later that night, when the recording of the song was finished, we lay in bed and played it over and over. We held on to each other and cried silently. It was all so overwhelming. I knew the night he loved me too, but long it was. But before long, it was time for him to go away and record in Atlanta. I knew the separation would be difficult, but I really thought we could make it. What I didn't know was that by this time, Ray was beginning to find out about me. We were growing apart. I deeply wished I were someone different, that I was a normal girl without all the baggage and sordid past. But I was who I was, and I had done what I had done. It was impossible to turn back. I couldn't undo all the abuse and all the men. He wanted to leave. I couldn't stop him. Hell, I couldn't blame him. What could I do? What I was also very good at was run. And that's what I did. I ran right to Papa again. I ran to the man who accepted me and away from the boy that I knew couldn't afford to. He was still in an impressionable stage in his life, and just that way, I was swept in and made him think I was wonderful. His friends and peers in the industry would soon prove to him that the image I portrayed was all an illusion. I also wanted Ray to hate me so that he could end it right there, quickly, in order to protect my heart. I wanted to let him go first because I knew he was about to do the same to me. So that's what I did. Late on Saturday night, I called Ray and told him about me and Papa. Naturally, he wasn't happy. He said some awful things to me, called me horrible names, and slammed down the phone. What he couldn't have known was known is that for the next 6 months, I cried every day for him. I genuinely missed him more than I'd missed any other man I'd ever known. When he hung up that night, it closed the door on that relationship that I still treasure. However, this thing with me and Ja wouldn't stop. We spent a lot of time together, and as the months passed, he gained more and more notoriety as an artist and a Hollywood bachelor. There were girls everywhere, and my position in his life became blurred. I was beginning to feel as my time with him would soon be up. How right was I? I was at Chuck's office one day, just shooting the breeze, when I picked up a copy of a music magazine. There was an incredible celebrating hip hop dads and their kids. This must have been around Father's Day. The magazine featured 5 or 6 fathers, including Ja. I knew he had a daughter who was about 5 at the time, but the article went on about him and his long-term girlfriend and how she was expecting another child. Although it was known that Ja had been with her, his teenage sweet Ben had been his teenage sweetheart for years. I found out in the article that Ja and I had been together. Wait. I found out in the article that while Ja and I had been together in Los Angeles, she was home in New York pregnant. The Ja I knew and the life he led, I chuckled to think of him as a family man. I thought to myself, she's so stupid. I felt as if I was the one who knew everything. I was the gatekeeper of the treacherous secrets of his life while he was in Los Angeles. I finished the article with a smile on my face until the last line. Ja's wife was 5 months pregnant. It was the exact amount of time that I had been in his life. My heart sank. I couldn't blink as my eyes swelled with tears. Who was stupid now? Who was getting the real job? Not me, not any of the other women who had been parts of his world. We were all replaceable and temporary. She, however, was permanent. Later that night, I met up with him at a local club. All of his friends and label mates were there, so I tried for a long time to hide my pain. I laughed and ordered drinks, danced around and popped pills. I tried to appear normal, but inside everything was different. He mingled and flirted relentlessly with other women. I felt the heart of jealousy crawling up my neck, blanking my face. Then I blinked, took in a long, slow breath and stepped. I grabbed champagne bottles and glasses, whatever I could find, and hurled them at his head. I ranted and raved, cried and blurted out words that were sure to make him leave me right then and there. He seemed so confused, as if he called out to me, come here, crazy girl. I was afraid to move closer. There was a pool table between us, and that table may very well have saved my life. But even in the middle of all of my chaos and acting out, he wouldn't let any of the others restrain me. It was like we had an unspoken understanding. He knew I was hurt and that my outbursts could be justified. I might have known exactly what caused it, but he knew that there was enough possibilities to choose from. He knew it was time, that it was the end. I left the club shortly after and drove recklessly, crying uncontrollably, like it was any breakup, even if it was the right thing to do. I started to have regrets about my temper tantrum. I wasn't ready to be over despite the reality check. I didn't want to drive all the way home on an empty condo. Instead, I wanted him to tell me he understood why I had snapped and that I could be with him for the night. I wanted him to touch me like he had before, like he did on the first night. So instead of going home, I drove to the familiar street where my life in LA had all started. I drove to Orchard Avenue. I parked in front of Orchard Suites Hotel and dialed his number. He sounded tired and uninterested in what I had to say, but didn't hang up. Ja, I'm sorry. It was drinks. And then I took some X, and I just got all emotional. I said, hey, baby, I'm so sorry. I cried out for him to forgive me. I wanted him to feel sorry for me and let me come to him. It's cool. Ma, don't worry about it. The tone of his voice said it all. He was done with me. I sat in my car that night and cried until it hurt. My eyes, my throat, my chest, it all hurts. I sat there in the car thinking about the hotel in front of me, wondering how I'd gotten into this mess. I wanted my old room back. I wanted to be back sitting among those outdated clothes. I wanted to undo the moment when I stepped into my first club, the moment when I popped my first pill. I wish I had never seen John's face or any of their faces. I wanted so badly to be a little girl minus the rape, the mother-daughter trauma, and all of the men. The only beacon of light was my son and my relationship with Papa. He was all I had left. Back then, I couldn't stand the idea of being alone. We're almost done with the book, y'all. We're on 70. We have 30 more pages left. We're almost done with the book. All right, I'm about to get off.